Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, 2. Better fight than Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, 1. I didn't know how that was possible because watching back that fight as many times as I did the first one, it was a fantastic, just fun fight. This one had everything. And McGregor squeaked it out. He definitely deserved to win the fight, at least in my opinion. Watching that 5 rounds, he won 1, 2, and 4. Diaz clearly won the third. I don't think it was a 10-8 round. One judge scored it as a 10-8 round. That's why you got the majority decision in favor of McGregor. Diaz clearly won the 5th. He had a late flurry in the 2nd, which some people are going back and forth on. McGregor won the fight. There's no doubt in my mind on that. And he employed the strategy that he needed to in order to win that bout, instead of going for the kill and falling into the Diaz trap once again. Sean, what were your thoughts on McGregor's victory at UFC 202?
Well, I think he learned from his past digressions, and as you said, he did what he needed to do to make sure what was best for McGregor business got handled at UFC 202.
And it's crazy because breaking down this fight, we knew McGregor was going to, like, the best way to chop Diaz down was to kick that leg, kick that leg, kick that leg, kick that leg. It's what he did for the first couple rounds. But McGregor said to himself after the fight, he couldn't do it as much as he wanted to because his shin was getting busted up doing it. And Nate, whose lead leg was purple by the end of the night, the dude is the toughest son of a gun in the UFC. Like, Nate was getting hit with bombs. McGregor was fighting fantastic, and Nate would not go down, would not be stopped. Conor looked like he gassed out in the middle of the 3rd round and looked like we would have a repeat performance, literally. And then at the end of that 3rd round, I'm thinking, at least, I don't know what your thoughts were, Sean, McGregor's toast. He's going down in the 4th. This is over.
Yeah, replay.
And that 2nd win comes out of nowhere. And he that was the most decisive round in the entire night, the 4th round. It was absolutely stunning. And you have to give McGregor the credit he deserves because he took on his worst possible matchup and won. And we're going to get a 3rd fight. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be at 155, which makes it even more intriguing. It's just, to me, it was the perfect card. It was the perfect fight. Like, the UFC couldn't have asked for anything more.
No, I agree with you, and I think ultimately they needed this to happen because not that it was going to hurt them or anything like this. I'm not meaning it that way, but we've seen cards start to drag on till 12:30, 12:45, the main event going on. You can't continue that model.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to become these more mainstream sports, which is what the UFC always wants to do, cards going off at 10 o'clock, it's like, oh boy. I'm literally sitting there watching this. I'm like, okay, if we can just have the main event go on before 12, it'd be like it's like a Christmas gift here on the East Coast. And then Tim Means gets the win over Hamasi. Mike Perry, who has a tattoo of God's gift on his stomach, wins in his UFC debut. Cowboy Cerrone looks better than I've ever seen him.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, the belts are not on the line.
Yeah, that's true. He's 11-1 in his last 12 fights.
Yep.
But he was once called inconsistent by Dana White. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah, well, it's only inconsistent when the gold's on the line.
Rumble Johnson almost... I mean, I've watched that punch at least, I don't know, probably 10, 15 times at this point. And that's the only way to elongate the fight because poor Glover Teixeira.
Yeah.
Man.
Didn't even get started.
He comes all that way to Las Vegas from Connecticut. He has the kids running around him in the UFC embedded. He looks all excited, ready to go. And good night. Because Rumble Johnson, I've said it before on this show. I've written it before. This guy is the most terrifying human being in the UFC. And I think he can beat John Jones. And I think he can beat Daniel Cormier. He is, and it's so crazy. This guy was a welterweight at one point. He was a welterweight. He was a 170-pounder. And now he's going out and decking the best at light heavyweight. And then McGregor and Diaz goes on, and you couldn't ask for anything more. 4 finishes and a fight of the night, 5-rounder that went the distance.
Yeah, and they stood, they fought. It wasn't like a danced and everything else. I mean, that's what I didn't expect it going to a decision because I didn't think either one would be able to withstand the punishment.
You want to hear these numbers? It's pretty crazy. 252 strikes. That was what Nate Diaz landed in the fight. 197 strikes. That's what Conor McGregor landed. 166 to 164 significant strikes. McGregor stuffed 6 takedowns from Diaz. That was incredibly impressive to me. Conor's takedown defense game and his ground game has gotten a lot better since we were having those conversations way back with him and Chad Mendez.
Yeah.
His skills have sharpened. Like it's not all talk. McGregor is one of the most skilled mixed martial artists in the world.
Well, I mean, I think he's taking what his camps, the camps are working with him.
Yep.
And he's doing, he's making himself better every camp. And I don't even know if he's necessarily preparing for the next opponent as much as, okay, I know I'm good in this area that he's good in, but this area I'm a little weak in, so let's work and focus on this. And he's just getting better all around.
Completely. Now, after the fight, we got the surprise bleep and bleep, which I thought was, McGregor said it after the fight in his exclusive Mac Life YouTube channel. He'd been planning to say that for months, and give him credit, it was a great line. And then Diaz thought he won the fight, but we get the line that let's do a trilogy, let's do it at 155, and let's settle this. Do you want a trilogy? That's my first question.
I mean, I would love to see a trilogy. I don't know if I want to see it right away.
That's the second question. Is this the trilogy, the next fight for both of these men?
Yeah, I mean, I think Diaz is hoping so.
Well, Nate can sit back and chill on that nice $2 million disclosed payday that he got from the fight, and that was just what it was disclosed. McGregor getting $3 million from the fight. It's good to see fighters getting over $1 million pay stubs essentially after their fights, because Brock Lesnar and McGregor were like the only guys, and now this is becoming a thing, which is only better and good for the sport. So let's throw the trilogy, because you can't do it immediately because these guys went through a war, and I think if you separate them, you can have 2 draws that can eventually come back together. I think you let some time, because 3 fights in the same year is insane. Like having 2 guys fight each other 3 times. So what do you think is next for McGregor? Because Diaz can sit back and relax. He said he will. He's waiting for the UFC brass to knock down his door the next time they want him to fight. So what's next for Conor McGregor here? Because there's 3 options, and I wrote about it on an article that you can read on the site. What's next for the UFC winners? Is it Aldo? Is it Alvarez? Or is it something else?
I'm just going to say that I would probably honestly lean toward Alvarez.
I'm with you on this.
Just because they said, he wants to be paid his next fight. And so what better way to get paid than to take on Conor McGregor?
Here's the question, because if he doesn't fight Aldo, that belt's getting vacated. That's been said. Even though we can't always trust everything that Dana White says is face value, this is something that he's been adamant on, that McGregor has to have his next fight at 145, or they should vacate the belt, which I completely agree with, because you can't have a 145-pound champion that doesn't defend the belt. And if personally for me, I agree that his next fight should be at 155. I think that unless you give unless he fights in the spring of next year, which I think should be it. If he fights like maybe Super Bowl card weekend in February, or fights in early spring, to give himself some time to just he's fighting this much so quickly, it shortens careers. And I don't want to see a guy like McGregor, who's in his prime right now, lose that. And going from 170 to 145 is such a dramatic cut. His coach, John Kavanagh, said he wants his next fight to be at 155 because that's what McGregor's kind of natural weight and fight class is, despite the fact that he's featherweight champion and has fought at 170 these past couple fights. Is that a bad thing for the UFC if he fights at 155, or does it even matter?
I mean, I don't think it matters, honestly. I mean, everybody's just going to want to see McGregor fight because what the UFC said originally, or what the old owners said, is obviously not 100% true.
Yeah.
Because there are a couple fighters that are starting to become bigger than what the UFC is.
Absolutely. With McGregor, I think 155 help. Like if he takes the time to get back down to 145, give me the Aldo fight because we never saw it. He knocked him out in 13 seconds. It was great timing by McGregor, and we saw one of the best pound for pound fighters in the history of the sport get dropped with one punch. And I would personally love to see that fight happen, just to see the clash of styles, to see the skills that both men have. Alvarez came out of nowhere to win that 155-pound belt over Dos Anjos in impressive and sensational fashion, which isn't usually his game. Alvarez against McGregor, I think, would be an awesome matchup as well. I don't think you can go wrong with McGregor's next fight.